Hi, welcome to the Stories Beside channel. Enjoy watching. Elizabeth, smiling, came out of the nursery and went straight into the hall, where everything was already prepared. For 2 weeks now, she had been trying to start this important business. But every day the same thing happens. Something keeps getting in her way. Today, she hoped to finally get started on her plan, and Elizabeth planned to lose weight. She had prepared a special set of exercises. She had downloaded the necessary videos to a flash drive, planned the time of exercise, and even picked out a rough diet plan for the time she would work out. She was confident that all of this would help her get back on track quickly, and she was full of enthusiasm. Sitting down on the rubber mat in front of the TV, Elizabeth always looked good. She did, however, have some predisposition to obesity. Taylor, Elizabeth's mother, said she inherited this from her father. Elizabeth, my mother was never overweight. Elizabeth tried to take care of herself, but without much fanaticism. All she had to do was make the least amount of effort, and she was back in perfect shape in no time. But after 2 pregnancies, something went wrong. And Elizabeth, to put it mildly, got a little fat. Elizabeth knew it wouldn't be hard to get in shape. But to do that, she had to work on herself. But there was always something in her way. What is there to say? It was her children. Her children were keeping her from working on her body. Her husband worked, and Elizabeth stayed home with the kids. She took care of them from morning till night. The girl herself thought she would find at least half an hour a day to exercise. But no, not even 15 minutes she could find. It was the law of meanness. As soon as she got ready to study, she was distracted by the children or other things. And Elizabeth, cursing to herself, put it off until another free time, which never came. Just now, as soon as Elizabeth turned on the flash drive, a few minutes later she heard crying. What in the world did you get out of a girl? She paused the video and listened. If that's William crying, you don't have to go near him. He'll calm down in a few minutes. But if it is Lauren, there is no use waiting. The daughter will never calm down by herself. She requires so much attention to herself that if you do not go to her in a minute, as she began to cry, then the daughter will yell so hard and so long that it will take a couple of hours to calm her down. Elizabeth's husband, he knew better than to take any chances here. She gave birth to both of them, Elizabeth, but they are so different, like the sun and the moon. A couple of seconds passed. Elizabeth couldn't take it anymore, and a dirty word came out of her mouth. It was Lauren crying. All about charging was forgotten. Once her daughter burst into tears, she wouldn't let Elizabeth get away from her. She would have to sit by the crib for the entire afternoon nap. That's it. Elizabeth is out today, too. The girl moaned softly, rose from the floor, and hurried to the nursery to soothe her demanding daughter. Daniel came home earlier than usual today. The apartment was quiet. Daniel realized that the children were still having their afternoon nap. Daniel frowned. He should have stayed half an hour longer. Something he had miscalculated a little. He was sure Elizabeth was going to start hitting on him, hinting at intimacy, and he didn't want to get into it again. He'd already denied her intimacy several times, citing fatigue. But it wasn't a matter of fatigue. It was something else entirely. Yes, Elizabeth was a very beautiful girl, but she had changed a lot after childbirth. Her figure didn't make Elizabeth want to touch her. Those folds on her back, her chapped belly, her full arms, her padded breasts with protruding veins. Elizabeth was too fat for Daniel to feel attracted to her. He hoped it would pass. But time passed and Elizabeth remained the same. Daniel couldn't help himself. It was beyond him. Then Daniel saw the rubber mat spread out in the middle of the room. He smiled. So Elizabeth had found time for herself after all. So soon she would look as good as she did before. Then Daniel heard rustling behind him. He looked around. It was Elizabeth coming out of the nursery. She brought her right index finger to her lips, signaling Daniel to be quiet. Elizabeth walked over to her husband and kissed him on the cheek, then whispered, "Lauren was cranky again today. I barely calmed her down. I had to sit by the crib for the whole nap." Daniel smiled, and nodded toward the rubber mat. I see you've finally taken care of yourself. Elizabeth sighed and rolled her eyes. How can you take care of yourself when the kids are so restless? You wouldn't believe it, but just when I wanted to study, Lauren started crying. No, today didn't work out either. Daniel frowned. There's something bothering you every day. Is it my fault? I have to take care of the children all the time. I don't have a minute to myself all day. You wouldn't believe it. As soon as I turn on the flash drive, something always happens. Daniel wanted to say something, but didn't say anything. He looked at his wife from head to toe. He even thought she had gotten larger over the past 2 weeks. Strange. When he was at home, he hadn't noticed that Elizabeth had eaten much or sat on the couch constantly without doing anything. So why was she puffing up, day by day? Maybe she has some kind of health problem. Maybe you should see a doctor. Maybe it's not about physical activity at all. Maybe you have some kind of hormonal problem. Elizabeth frowned. She ran her hand over her stomach. What kind of irregularity? I gave birth recently. It's a natural process. It just takes time to recover. A woman can take a long time to recover from a single birth. I gave birth to 2 babies, one after the other. It's twice as hard for me. It'll get better. You just have to work at it. That's all. And the kids won't let me do that. I already had this idea that I need to hire a nanny to go to the fitness club for 2 hours. That way I'm sure to lose weight for sure. Daniel didn't say anything back. Elizabeth looked at her husband. What an injustice. The one who is slim in their family is Daniel. He hasn't changed. He's even getting better, even though he doesn't exercise at all. Why are men so lucky? Well, her Daniel sure is lucky. He gets better and better as he gets older. Elizabeth was worried that she was no longer fit for her husband, but not too much. She knew that she should at least take a month to work out. She could easily get into shape. Elizabeth put her arm around her husband's neck and whispered, "You know, we have another half hour. We could do something interesting and useful." Daniel pulled away from her slightly. "You know, I'm so hungry. I hope you made something delicious. I'm so hungry. I could eat an elephant. My favorite wife will feed her hungry husband." Elizabeth sighed and smiled again. Only the smile came out a little sad. "Of course I will. I've made a new stew today. I'm sure you'll like it." "Oh, that's great. Then I'll go wash my hands. In the meantime, you put some on me." That's the way it always went. Elizabeth had long noticed that her husband was always pulling away from her. But she chalked it up to fatigue. Daniel has had to work hard at the firm lately. There has been some movement going on. Daniel said that something strange was going to happen, as if there were going to be some changes at the firm, and he had to be careful to stay afloat. Otherwise, the employees who don't like it might get fired. This happened a few years ago. Once again, the bosses at the firm where Daniel worked liked to periodically purge employees. In their opinion, it was conducive to development and advancement. Several weeks went by. Elizabeth was still not finding time for herself. It felt like the kids were getting more and more restless. Daniel came home from work every day so tired that Elizabeth tried not to touch him. And then Daniel broke the news to her that he had been fired. He had felt for some time that this would happen, so he immediately found a way out. He had already found himself a job at another firm, and this one was better. Elizabeth was very happy for her husband. Even the workday there was shorter. Elizabeth hoped that Daniel might be able to spend more time at home to help her with the children. She would have more free time to take care of herself. But alas, that did not happen. Even though the workday was shorter, Daniel still stayed late. He was still very tired at work. He had more responsibilities. Elizabeth continued to get better. Daniel was getting prettier and prettier. Now he was taking even more care of himself. He now started going to the gym 3 times a week. "Why would you want to do that? You already look great. You have a great figure," Elizabeth told him. "It's great now. If I don't maintain it, it will get worse over time. I need to keep my body toned. Otherwise, it will end badly." Without looking at his wife, Daniel said. Elizabeth knew that next to such an almost perfect husband, she looked terrible. Now she was making desperate attempts to lose weight. Since exercising was not working out for her, she went on a strict diet. She ended up getting a severe attack of gastritis after a month. She had to go to the doctor. She was warned that if she starved herself, the case will end in hospital. Thanks to the diet, Elizabeth lost 5 pounds. But after going to the doctor, she had to start again, eating, and she gained 7 pounds. It was a fiasco. Daniel had an interesting job. He worked for a design and modeling firm on various projects. Elizabeth had done the same thing herself before maternity. While Daniel had only finished a few courses, Elizabeth had an art degree and was a professional designer. She had a great job. She even had a promotion waiting for her. But, unfortunately, at the most inopportune moment, she became pregnant with her firstborn son. No one at the firm would keep her. She was warned that if she gave birth to a child, she would simply be made redundant. A new employee would be hired. Elizabeth didn't hesitate long. Family was more important to her. She chose the baby and her husband, and she lost her job. She was now a homemaker, taking care of the children and the house. She could have worked remotely, of course, but she just didn't have time for that. The children were very restless, demanding constant attention, and Elizabeth didn't want to ruin her relationship with her husband. If she did work remotely, she simply wouldn't have time to do anything at home, and she wouldn't have anything to feed her husband. But of course she would have been successful by now. Maybe after she put the children in kindergarten, there would be a job ready for her at some firm. Elizabeth's brains were starved for work, so she often helped her husband when he took work home with him. There were even times when Daniel would go to the gym and Elizabeth would do a design project for him. Daniel loved everything his wife did and praised her in those moments. Elizabeth felt like a goddess. She felt that she was an important link in the party life. A little more time passed, and Daniel began to complain about work. They don't appreciate me. I could have been deputy director a long time ago, but they don't appreciate me. The director's nephew works at this firm. He's so dumb, and he doesn't have a shred of ability. And everyone predicts a great future for him. That Christian is such a fool. I can't even talk to him. And I think it is unfair that he is singled out among the others, even though he is nothing. Daniel was indignant when he came home. Elizabeth tried to console her husband. You know that. That's the way it always happens. It happens so often that whole families work in such good places. Get over it. Then you won't be so hurt. The most important thing is that I know how capable and talented you are. But Daniel wouldn't let up. What does this have to do with you? I'm not going to put up with this. It's not fair. If I don't get a promotion in a month, I'm out of there. But less than a month later, Daniel came home, happy and excited. Can you believe it? I found another place. It's a rival firm to the one I work for now. And they promised me a higher position and a bigger salary. Tomorrow I'm going to write my resignation letter and go there. Look, Daniel, just so you don't regret it, Elizabeth said. Really? Why should I regret it? No, I won't regret it. I've already met the director. How much I like it there. I'll be better off there. Daniel changed jobs for the 3rd time in the last 6 months. Elizabeth had a bad feeling about him, and it seemed that his new job wasn't going to do him any good. She couldn't even understand what it was, but she felt uncomfortable. Daniel seemed to come home happy. He kept telling her about the new projects, about the employees, about the good director. He was happy with everything. Only Elizabeth sensed something bad was coming. As time passed, the children became calmer. Elizabeth began to work on her figure. But she couldn't get into shape overnight, though she'd previously thought she could do it easily. 4 months later, she lost only a few pounds, not the 20 pounds she'd intended to lose. But Elizabeth believed she was on the right track. At least she felt fine. She was breathing better. Yes, her skin was becoming noticeable. The tightened cellulite was slowly disappearing. She noticed the slightest change in her body, But her husband didn't notice these changes at all. When Elizabeth bragged to her husband a few months later about her figure, Daniel shrugged indifferently. "I don't know. It doesn't look like anything to me. It seems to me that this set of exercises is not suitable for you. Maybe you should start a more intensive workout. You're picking a weird set. More like yoga. Maybe you should get a treadmill. I think it would do more good." Elizabeth pressed her lips together in anger. Her husband's words not only hurt her, but devalued her results, which she was so proud of. She was proud of every millimeter and every gram that was so slowly but surely leaving her body. Daniel, it turns out, didn't notice anything. "I don't need a treadmill. And you're wrong. This set of exercises suits me just fine. I'm slowly but surely getting rid of the extra weight. You just don't notice it, or you pretend you don't." Daniel shrugged again. "Maybe it does happen so slowly that I don't notice, but I think it is possible to lose weight much faster. Are you slowing down the process yourself? Are you really happy with this result?" "I'm fine with it, because I can already see the difference, and the fact that you don't notice it is a little surprising. You've always noticed the changes in my body before." Elizabeth replied wryly. "Well, if those changes were about you getting better, then yes, it really was more noticeable." In the same tone, Daniel replied. They both fell silent. Elizabeth resented her husband for not paying attention to her all evening. He was minding his own business, going through some papers, looking at something on his laptop, and then someone called him on the phone. Daniel went out on the balcony and talked for a long time. They went to bed at different times. Daniel went to bed first, and Elizabeth sat in the kitchen for a long time. She thought her husband would come and call her to make up. He would apologize. But that didn't happen. She went to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, with a heavy heart. From that day on, Elizabeth began to notice that Daniel was acting rather strangely. They didn't talk much. He mostly talked to the children, and that was when she asked him to. He never took the initiative himself. Elizabeth started exercising even more, but she was still slow to lose weight. She even went to the doctor. A friend advised her to see an endocrinologist. That is who she went to. She underwent hormone tests and some other examinations. The endocrinologist said there was nothing wrong with her. Apparently, after 2 births, her metabolism slowed down a little, but it will be back to normal soon. Elizabeth wanted to sign up for the pool. "My husband refused to babysit 3 evenings a week because he had a gym. The other 3 times he came back later than usual." What was this about? He explained quite briefly. "We had a new project at work. The director had asked that I work extra hours for extra pay." Elizabeth no longer pestered him with talk, but she still felt uneasy and couldn't calm down. 2 more months passed. Elizabeth lost some more weight, but her husband didn't notice. He began to behave even more suspiciously. Constant and late phone calls. The long conversations on the balcony drove Elizabeth mad, and finally she couldn't take it anymore. It began with Elizabeth hinting at intimacy with her husband. "Our children are sleeping better at night. We're not as tired anymore. Maybe we could make time for each other. What do you think?" She purposely wore the new underwear she had bought a couple of days ago. She was proud that she was able to buy a smaller size than she had worn before, and she thought it was becoming noticeable. Daniel, however, paid no attention to her appearance. He rather glumly replied to her, "Just don't start. I don't have time for this right now. I have other things on my mind." "What's on your mind?" "I'm curious." Elizabeth was angry. "It's none of your business." "That's none of your business," Daniel replied sharply. "Daniel, you've been acting strange lately, and it's impossible to ignore. There's something going on between us. I'm not stupid enough to ignore it. Can you at least answer me one question about who calls you all the time at night? What do you care? It's a work thing. I don't think that's all you need to know. Actually, I'm your wife, in case you haven't forgotten. And I'd like to know who's always calling my husband. Every day you're out on the balcony all the time. Do I need to check your phone to find out?" Elizabeth objected. "Have you come down to that already? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You're a grown woman with 2 kids, and you're watching me. You should have taken better care of yourself. Wouldn't there have been a situation like this? What situation? What do you mean? Elizabeth said loudly. This is the situation. If you hadn't been such a pig, I might not have looked at the others. Daniel was silent, looking at his wife. Elizabeth saw such intense anger in his gaze that she was taken aback. She knew at once what her husband meant, and that he was no longer just looking at others. Most likely, he already had someone else. Elizabeth pulled herself together. She was not a scandalous, and she wasn't going to be one now. Yes, she was hurt, but she knew that things happened in life. Fate sometimes takes a person sideways, and sometimes changes their life so abruptly that you could never have predicted it. Daniel, we have 2 children. We loved each other, and I deserve to know the truth. Don't lie to me. I don't deserve it. Tell me you have another one. Just don't lie to me. After all, I'll know you're lying anyway. There's no need for that anymore, she said calmly. Daniel was silent for a few minutes, and then answered just as calmly. Elizabeth counted to 10, and then back to 1. And then she asked, "How long have you been cheating on me?" "I don't know. A few months too long," and uncertainly answered Daniel. "And then what?" Elizabeth asked. Daniel blinked his eyes several times. "What do you mean?" Surprised, he asked. Did Daniel expect Elizabeth to give him a scandal? He probably even wanted to. It would have been easier for him. He would have yelled at his wife, too, retaliated by taking his anger out on her. But that didn't happen. Elizabeth acted too calmly, and now Daniel didn't know how to act next. Her calm tone with which she asked this common question left him puzzled. "What do I mean?" "I mean, what are we going to do next? You have another. You told me that honestly. I appreciate that. But what's next? You're still going to date someone else while living with me." Daniel squinted. "Well, then let's get a divorce, since you're not happy with that." "Of course I'm not happy with it. That's why I think divorce is the best option. Why live with someone you don't want anymore?" There was a silence. They both looked at each other. Then Elizabeth gave Daniel his pillow. "I think you'd better sleep in the hall until we decide what to do." "You will sleep in the hall." "That's what I've decided. It's better that way." Daniel opened his mouth to say something, but immediately shut it. He hummed, showing that he didn't care. Then he took the pillow and left the bedroom. Elizabeth stared after him for a while, then bit her lower lip. Then she lay face down on the pillow and cried softly. She was not going to show her husband her weakness. The next day was business as usual. Daniel had breakfast and left for work. Elizabeth stayed home with the children. She felt bad about herself and even wanted to cancel her exercise, but she didn't. She should move on with her husband. They would decide what to do later, but she shouldn't stop doing things for her own sake, not because of him. He didn't deserve to make her sad for him. In the evening, Daniel came home. He heated dinner for himself. Neither of them talked about their relationship. They exchanged a few words about the kids. Then Daniel watched cartoons with them. He even put them to bed. Then he fell asleep on the couch. Elizabeth went to sleep in the bedroom. She spent half the night agonizing, trying to figure out why Daniel was acting this way. Several days passed. There was no more talk of divorce. Elizabeth had hoped that her husband wanted to preserve their relationship. Of course, she was unhappy that he had gotten another woman. But if he was sorry for what he had done, she was even willing to forgive him. She hoped he would be. She even began to think that Daniel had become more affectionate. And one evening she noticed that he looked at her sideways. She hoped he'd noticed her weight loss, though it was still a long way from perfect. But it was all just her silly dreams. A few days later, she realized that nothing had changed, that Daniel was still seeing someone else. It happened when Daniel left the phone on the table and went to the bathroom himself. The phone was on silent, but it vibrated when someone called him. Elizabeth threw a glance at the screen. The only name on it was Ashley, and Elizabeth realized that her husband didn't have her alone. and that divorce was inevitable. She said nothing to her husband when he came in and took the phone to go out on the balcony with him. She watched him sideways, saw him smiling as he talked to a stranger named Ashley, that he liked talking to this stranger more than he liked talking to his own wife. They need to get a divorce. Now she realized this. Several days passed, and Elizabeth kept thinking about the divorce. What bothered her most was that she wasn't working. How could she support her children if she didn't even have anything to do it with? At this time, her friend Catherine came to see her. Elizabeth told her everything. Catherine was outraged and said that Elizabeth had to work it out with her husband. "Let me babysit. Go to his work. Figure it out right now," Catherine said. "No, I can't wait for him from work. You can't even talk to him properly. The kids keep getting in the way. Go to his work. I'll babysit. Don't worry. No one will bother you at work." Elizabeth hesitated for only a few minutes. Catherine convinced her. Elizabeth left the children with Catherine. Quickly, she cleaned herself up and went to her husband's office. Daniel was very surprised by his wife's arrival. When Elizabeth showed up at his office, he said sternly, "Why are you here?" Then he realized that his wife had never come to his office before, and he asked excitedly, "What happened? Where are the children? Did something happen?" Did Elizabeth rush to reassure him? "No, everything is fine. The children are with Catherine. She came to visit me, and she's going to babysit them while I'm here." Daniel frowned. "Elizabeth, what are the numbers? Are you throwing them out?" "I need to talk to you," the girl replied. "What's so urgent? Couldn't you talk to me at home? Are you being too unpredictable lately? It's strange. I don't like it. You can be expected to do anything, and it makes me nervous. I get enough stress at work, and being stressed out at home all the time. It's too much, don't you think?" Elizabeth took in a lot of air and started saying all kinds of things until she changed her mind. "You know, it all bothers me too. It bothers me that you admitted to cheating on me. And now you're pretending that everything's okay between us. It's annoying that you keep calling this unknown girl and you keep hanging out on the balcony to talk to her. It's annoying that you barely talk to me. It's like we're strangers. Do you really want to live like this?" Daniel listened intently to his wife and then looked past her for a few seconds. Elizabeth didn't pay attention. She couldn't stop herself anymore. "If you feel so bad for me that you can't even hide it, if you want someone else, me and the kids are stressing you out, then let's file for divorce. I don't mind what to live for. It's better to go our separate ways. There's just one hitch. You know very well that I don't work to support my children myself. I need extra funding. Since you, my husband, you are obligated to support us, at least until I get a job after I start working, and the kids go to kindergarten. I'll just file for child support, and you don't have to worry anymore after that. But at first, you'll still have to provide for us completely. It's not like I get child care. You know that. Provide fully for you," Daniel asked ironically, nodding his fingers on the table. "Why are you so surprised? Don't you think that would be unfair?" Elizabeth answered indignantly, losing patience with his calmness and indifference. "Yes, he thinks it would be unfair because he already has the one he will provide for. And it's not you at all." A voice was heard behind Elizabeth. She turned around sharply. In front of her stood a very slender, tall stranger. She was smartly dressed, and she was so well groomed, as if she had been groomed for a fashion magazine shoot. Her makeup was perfect, her hair perfect, her figure perfect, her gorgeous breasts visible in the cut of her fancy blouse. The bright red manicure and scarlet lipstick. It suited her very well, and it was obvious that she knew it. She was such a confident girl that she probably didn't notice the other females around her. "Why are you prying into my conversation with my husband?" Elizabeth said indignantly. The girl raised one eyebrow. She closed the door to the office behind her and walked to Daniel's desk. "Because I am directly related to your conversation. My name is Ashley, and I'm the one your husband will be providing for me after the divorce." Elizabeth went pale. God, this was the woman who called her husband all the time. It was probably the one he had cheated on her with, judging by Daniel's calm face. Elizabeth was right. Ashley walked over to Daniel and put her hand on his shoulder. Arrogantly, she looked Elizabeth over from head to toe. Then she hummed, "Yes, dear, you were right. She does look inappropriate. God, I've never understood women who let themselves go to such lengths. Can't you take care of yourself? Especially when you've got a pretty good baseline. How dare you talk to me like that? I'm not there yet. Daniel, you have no right to intrude on our conversation, whatever it is between us." "Yes, I do, my dear. I have every right. Daniel loves me, and we're dating. You're just an extra, you and your children. You're just getting in the way of Daniel's life, developing, having fun, enjoying life. I don't even know how he put up with you for so long. Look at who you look like. Do you even look in the mirror? Sometimes I don't think I do. I gotta hand it to you. Not everyone has the self-confidence you do. You should open a course. I can even give you a name. And don't thank me for my help. How do you stay married to a handsome, successful man when you're a fat pig? There's your name. And you can teach other women how not to lose your confidence by staying just like you. You will be a great example for such women. I'm sure you'll have a lot of fans, and you'll make a lot of money on these courses. Not until you get exposed, though. But I think you'll have enough money just before you go to work, because Daniel won't provide for you or your children. Got it? Our children. They're not just my children." Elizabeth was taken aback by all the insults and hurtful words coming from her husband's mistress. Ashley waved his hand carelessly. "Oh, it was yours and now it's yours. After a divorce, everything unnecessary is left overboard. So, my dear, my advice to you, do not count on anything, because then it will be very painful. It's better to get out of the way right away. Daniel, why don't you say something? Does it please you that this woman is insulting me? Why is she meddling in our conversation? Why is she acting like a hostess here? Why don't you kick her out?" Elizabeth tried to reason with her husband, but Ashley didn't let Daniel say a word, "Because I am here, and I am here. Mistress is my father's firm, and I have the right to be where I want, and I can take whatever I want. And you are nobody here. So there's nothing to be doing about the rights that don't exist. And you don't have any rights to Daniel either, and you won't get any financial help. Daniel doesn't want to lose me, so he'll make sure I'm happy. What about you? Here's your financial help. That's all you can count on, sweetheart." Ashley took $500 out of her skirt pocket and threw it on the table. They landed on the edge of the table right in front of Elizabeth. The girl stared at the money, keeping her eyes on it. She did it to keep from crying. If she looked at her husband or his mistress now, she would burst into tears of resentment. But she was looking at the money. She already knew what she was going to do next. And she wanted to remember this moment so that in the future, when she felt really bad, it would be hard to remember every second, to know what it was all about, to remember that she had been humiliated and trampled on, to understand that she could only count on herself. Elizabeth stood for some time without taking her eyes off the bill lying humiliatingly on the edge of the table in front of her, when she felt that she was in control. She sighed quietly and looked at her husband, then at his vile, though beautiful mistress. Elizabeth straightened her back, what made her seem taller, and calmly said, "Thank you for your help, but I do not need it. I've thought it over. I can manage on my own without your help, Daniel. Since you don't need the children, and I've come to the conclusion that you don't need them, since you've been quiet all this time, we'll just disappear from your life. That would be even better. Contact with you would be so unpleasant to me that I'd rather hold a snake in my hands. You'd rather have a pig come running to you, take you for her own, so to speak." Ashley replied sarcastically and laughed. Daniel remained gloomily silent. His expression didn't even change. Ashley gripped him tenaciously by the shoulder with her hand. Apparently, it kept him from saying a word. Elizabeth stood for a while longer, looking at her lovers and mentally saying goodbye to her happy married life and broken love. And then she felt the treacherous tears come to her eyes. She sighed, squared her shoulders as best she could, maintaining her own dignity and knowing that she was very bad at it, and left the office, closing the door tightly behind her and leaving the past behind her. Elizabeth took her things and the children's things and left. She didn't wait for Daniel to file for divorce. She would do it herself. Elizabeth called her mother and told her that she had left her husband. Of course, Mom was very upset. She herself had broken up with Elizabeth's daddy when she was young, so she didn't blame her daughter for anything. Taylor knew what it's like when the closest person betrays, spits in the soul, and cut off the relationship for the sake of a fleeting affair. Elizabeth moved in with the children at her mother's house. Her friend Catherine tried to help her in any way she could because she didn't get any help from Daniel. He disappeared from their lives as if he never existed. He had never cared about her or their children before. He changed so much after he met Ashley. There she is, his commitment. Catherine and Taylor told Elizabeth to sue. The girl adamantly didn't want to do that. She didn't need any help from Daniel. She decided she could handle everything on her own. He betrayed me. I don't need a penny from him. My children won't need anything. I will achieve that at any cost. But Daniel will have no credit for it, firmly said Elizabeth. Taylor knew that her daughter was very stubborn. If she had something in her head, no one could dissuade her, so she told her daughter that she would give her all the help she needed. Elizabeth thanked her mother. Catherine, too, said she would help in any way she could. Taylor still worked every day, and Catherine worked shifts, so she helped Elizabeth by babysitting her children when she was free. Elizabeth, meanwhile, was looking for work. The children could only go to daycare in a year, but Elizabeth wasn't going to sit still for that long. From all the worry and stress, Elizabeth began to lose weight very quickly. She kept exercising, but only for about 15 to 20 minutes a day. Very soon she lost all the extra pounds. After a month, Elizabeth realized that she couldn't find anything that fit. There just wasn't anything worthwhile. And then she opened some website and found a job as a designer. The job was remote. The girl had never worked this way before, but she was ready to jump at any job. She called the phone number that was listed on the website. An online interview was scheduled for the next day. Elizabeth grabbed her head. She had an old laptop. The video and microphone didn't work. Mom and Catherine helped her with money. Elizabeth went and bought herself a nice laptop that same day. The next day there was an online interview. Elizabeth passed it with flying colors. She was hired to work remotely. The probationary period lasted 3 months. In just 1 month, the girl was formalized, and in another 2 months, Elizabeth was able to pay her mother and Catherine back. The work fascinated her so much that Elizabeth couldn't tear herself away from her laptop. She was so starved for intellectual pursuits that she wanted to learn more every day. Within 6 months, she was promoted. Yes, it was remote, but it was also double the salary. Elizabeth was celebrating a victory. She could now provide for her 2 children on her own. And after another month, she was able to rent an apartment on her own. And 6 months later, she took out a mortgage. As time passed, Elizabeth was able to enroll her children in daycare. It got easier. She continued to work remotely. A few months later, she was told that a branch of the firm Elizabeth was now working for remotely was opening in her city. She was offered the position of deputy director. Elizabeth immediately accepted. A few days later, the director arrived. She was scheduled to meet with him to sign a contract and clarify all the details of her future work. Elizabeth carefully prepared for the meeting with the firm's director. She bought herself a new suit, a dark green color. Her trim and toned figure looked so good in it. Elizabeth looked great in it. When Elizabeth arrived at the right address, she marveled at the gorgeous building. She would be working here as deputy director. That is, of course, if the meeting with the principal goes well and he likes her. When she knocked on the principal's office, she heard a pleasant voice. "Yes, come in, come in." Elizabeth took a deep breath, put a polite smile on her face, and entered the principal's office. "Hello." She said hello to the man who was standing with his back to her near the window. When the man turned to face her, Elizabeth was slightly taken aback. She had not expected the director to be so young and handsome. She even felt a little uncomfortable. She was getting ready to meet a man of her age, and the director turned out to be her age. Elizabeth was embarrassed, and the director smiled and said to her, "Wow, what a gorgeous deputy I'm going to have. They didn't tell me you were so young." Elizabeth immediately found something to answer him. "I, too, was not warned that the director would be so young." In the same tone, she answered him. The principal laughed. Then he walked up to her and held out his hand. "My name is Tyler. I'd be happy to be your young principal. My name is Elizabeth." "Oh, Elizabeth, I'd be glad to be your young deputy." Tyler shook her hand firmly and then looked intently into her eyes. Elizabeth wanted to pull her hand from his palm, but he held it firmly. "I'm sure our business relationship will be strong and long-lasting," Tyler said. His voice mesmerized her, and Elizabeth, not taking her eyes off his, answered him quietly, "I hope so." Daniel clutched his head. How bored was he with everything? It had been 8 years since he'd come to this firm. 3 years ago, his boss died. Daniel had hoped until the last moment that Ashley, his daughter, would take over the firm. He had big, grand plans for it, but things didn't go the way he had planned. After Ryan, his wife Jessica took over the firm. Oh, it got tough working at the firm. Jessica started making her own rules, and she didn't like the chief's daughter, Ashley, at all. She was her stepdaughter. They had no children with the former chief. Jessica slowly made it so that the firm began to decline. They began to suffer losses. Jessica realized that it wasn't easy to run the firm, and she lost all interest in it. Daniel and the rest of the staff tried their best to keep the firm afloat. But Daniel was not the master of the place. He couldn't do everything. He asked Ashley to talk to her stepmother. "Let Jessica remain the mistress here, but put the reins in Daniel's hands." Ashley, however, had lost interest in the whole thing too. She lost interest in Daniel too. After a while, Daniel found out that she was constantly changing lovers and cheating on him. Daniel tried to sway him, but the girl immediately put him in his place. "You are not my husband, and you have no right to tell me what to do. I do what I want, and I do it. Have you got a master over him? If you say one more word, you're out of here. There was a time when you and I used to have fun. We were good together. But now I have other interests, and don't tell me what to do. I'm not your wife. It's that fat pig that put up with your humiliation, but I'm not going to do that." And Daniel shut up. After his relationship with Ashley ended, Daniel began to think about his ex-wife a lot. After the divorce, he stopped all communication with her. They did not communicate. Elizabeth did not file for child support. He did not help his children in any way. He didn't even know where they lived now. Of course, he knew his former mother-in-law's phone number, but he didn't want to call this one. The crazy one. No, she never hurt him, never demanded anything. But she always spoke to him so pitifully that Daniel immediately felt guilty, as if he had done something wrong and had not apologized. He was sure his former mother-in-law would talk to him even more pitifully after the divorce, and he didn't want to hear her unhappy voice. Elizabeth wasn't going to call Daniel. That meant she was admitting defeat. He was willing to help his children, but only if Elizabeth called him herself and asked for it. Then he would leniently agree to help, and he would even be willing to go out with the children, as if he were doing her a favor. In fact, he missed being in a family relationship. After all, he and Elizabeth had had a normal family until he met Ashley. She had turned his head. This lecherous woman gave him hope that in the future she would run the firm. When her father died, but Ashley miscalculated that Ryan would marry this Kikamura, who now runs the firm, and let everything fall apart. But things didn't work out the way Daniel had planned. Elizabeth never called him. Daniel tried to figure out how Elizabeth was supporting the children herself. He didn't feel sorry for the children. At some point, he got a little worried. After all, They were his children, but he couldn't make the first move. It was beneath his dignity. It was better for Elizabeth to humiliate herself by calling him. And he was sure she would. Yet so many years had passed and Elizabeth still hadn't called. And Daniel thought more and more that maybe he shouldn't have gotten a divorce back then. And why had he said then that he was having an affair with Ashley? He would have been better off not saying anything. Things at the firm were getting worse and worse. And at some point, the thing everyone feared would happen happened. Jessica sold her husband's firm. The new owner was an older guy, kind of family-oriented, kind of normal, grabby, strict, but fair. Daniel had hoped that things would get better at the firm, and he decided that he needed to get closer to the new director. He needed to make contact with him. Maybe the new director would make him his deputy. After a while, however, Daniel learned some unexpected news. It turned out that Ashley, who worked at the firm as a secretary, had very quickly found her way to the new director. She quickly turned the married man's head and became his mistress. It turns out that the new director was not such a family man. Or maybe this Ashley was just too lecherous and adventurous. She could have been a crush on any man. She took advantage of that. One day she was walking past Daniel's office. He grabbed her by the arm and pulled her into his office, shutting the door tightly behind him. He immediately hissed at her. "What are you doing? Why are you sticking it to the new headmaster?" Ashley lifted her chin. "Why are you meddling in your own business again? Who do I talk to?" "That's who I talk to. You're not the boss of me. I thought I told you before. You can't tell me what to do. I see you've forgotten that. I'll remind you again." "How could I? You just tell me. You know." Ashley became the principal's mistress. Daniel thought it best to be nice to her. "Don't be so hard on yourself. I was being nice to you, and I'm not bossing you around. I just want to know what the director's plans for the firm are," he said calmly, trying not to be angry with his former lover. Ashley squinted and then smirked at the firm, or at you. "What exactly were you going to say of the firm? At you, at me, at everyone? I like working here. I wouldn't want to lose my job in all these years, and I deserve a promotion already. I'd like to know if I can expect it, or if I have to be patient for a while longer." Ashley folded her arms across her chest and looked arrogantly at her former lover. "I haven't talked to him about it. And frankly, I wasn't going to talk to Anthony. We communicate on other topics of work that don't concern us." Daniel felt like he was about to lose his temper. It was hard for him to hold back, but he knew he had to be careful with Ashley if she was so close to the new director. It could be very dangerous for him if he messed up his relationship with her. He had to get over himself now and act deliberately. "Ashley, I know you. You're such a wonderful girl. Intelligent, smart, resourceful. I wish we could understand each other. If I could count on your help, I'd do anything for you that you ask." Ashley raised one eyebrow, looking at Daniel sneeringly. Yes, she had liked him very much at one time. She was still physically attracted to him. She wasn't going to build a relationship with him because he was already unpromising. However, he could be kept as a backup. So Ashley decided not to write him off completely. It could be done at any time, but not now, not yet. So she smiled slightly and said condescendingly, "Well, I'll see what I can do. You meant too much to me once. Even now, I don't know what I feel for you. I don't know what I feel for you now. I need time to make up my mind. You have to wait." "Wait for what, Ashley? I asked you a very definite question, and answer it, if only for the sake of our past wonderful relationship, although I hope they may still be beautiful now." Okay, I hear you. Okay, I'll do my best. Be patient, and not all at once. Have patience. Anthony is wonderful to me, but I can't get too cocky. I have to get close to him to ask him to deal with your situation. I promise you I'll talk to him soon. Is that okay with you, or are things not enough for you?" Daniel smiled. "Of course I'm okay with it. Darling, I will wait very patiently." With that, they parted ways. Daniel hoped that he would soon be promoted and that Anthony would later make him his deputy, and that Daniel would have the dizzying success he deserved. But nothing changed in his position. He was still sitting on his position and salary. But the situation with Ashley changed too dramatically. His former mistress was settling in just fine. She told Daniel that she needed to get closer to the principal to talk to him about Daniel and his promotion. However, she was already getting close enough. There was nowhere else to go with him. She openly visited his office during the workday. She stopped doing her job duties. They would gather with the principal in his office, and everyone knew they were not to be disturbed. Everyone knew he had a beautiful wife and children, but Ashley became his mistress without even hiding it. She was not embarrassed by the fact that he was old enough to be her father. He was more than 20 years old. He was older than she was, and not particularly attractive. But Ashley adored him so much that he considered himself the best lover in his prime. And for these sensations that his young and enchanting mistress gave him, he was ready to carry her in his arms, which he did, in fact. After a while, Ashley stopped working. Anthony made her his personal assistant. Only what she did, no one knew. Daniel knew she wasn't doing anything. She was just a plaything of the new director. And for that, he let her do everything. Soon Ashley stopped coming to work altogether. But she got a regular paycheck. She was getting paid, but she wasn't doing anything. Daniel still couldn't get her on the phone. She wouldn't return his calls. When she did show up at the firm, she only talked to her elderly lover. The director idolized Ashley. He didn't talk to the rest of the employees. Basically, his new deputy was in charge of everything. And it was Anthony's nephew. Daniel was tearing up and tearing down. He couldn't understand why things had gotten so out of hand. Everything was going wrong and there was nothing he could do. Ashley soon started going on trips the director sent her on. It wasn't until some time later that everyone found out that she was traveling to resorts at the firm's expense. Sometimes Anthony would go with her, but almost always she would rest by herself. All the employees of the firm were shocked, but everyone kept quiet because they were afraid to say a word. Everyone valued his place. Only Daniel was outraged because he had never expected things to turn out this way. He deserved something completely different. He was watching his former mistress, who was very well ensconced under this old fart. Time passed, but everything remained the same. Was Daniel tired of this job? He did not know what would happen next, and with each passing month, his hopes for promotion faded more and more. He thought about quitting several times, but he knew he couldn't find a better place so soon. And again to work without a break for a few years to earn his authority he would not like. He realized that he would have to start all over again, and that again sleepless nights, after-hours work without pay to prove his competence and professionalism. No, it wasn't for him anymore. After a while, Ashley started showing up at the firm more and more often. Daniel noticed that she was almost always something restless, although she tried to hide it. One day, everyone at the firm heard her and Anthony arguing in his office. It lasted only a few minutes, and in half an hour, Ashley came out of the director's office in a great mood. Her eyes were treacherously glistening, as if she had been crying before. But she was smiling all over her mouth as she walked out of the building. And a couple of days later, a rumor went around that the principal was in some kind of trouble and wouldn't show up to work for a couple of days because he had to leave urgently. Almost everyone thought he had gone on vacation, but he wasn't. Ashley came to the principal's office in his absence. She was only there for a few minutes, but she left very worried, and she had a frightened look on her face. Daniel guessed that Anthony was really in some kind of trouble, and apparently Ashley knew about them. She did. The director had problems, only they were of a personal nature. Turns out his wife finally found out about Ashley. She came to the firm when Anthony was out and wanted to find Ashley. Where is that phony who was messing with my husband? Where was that scum screaming director's wife? It was explained to her. Ashley is hardly ever at the firm. The director's wife left with nothing. She loudly promised that if she saw this thing, she would pull her hair out. All the employees looked at each other meaningfully, and then quietly discussed the whole situation in their corners and offices. A month later, the employees were not paid their salaries on time, and everyone was shocked. It turned out that things were going very badly at the firm. Problems with money had begun. However, the director never showed up at the firm, and his deputy remained silent. Ashley was happy when she showed up at the firm. After a while, Ashley herself showed up at Daniel's office. He was no longer expecting to see her. "What people and how did you get here?" "What wins, sweetheart?" Daniel said wryly, looking at his ex-girlfriend from head to toe. Ashley smiled beamingly and answered, "What's the matter? Aren't you happy to see?" Daniel shrugged his shoulders. "I would have been glad to see you a while ago, but now it's kind of late. Don't you think?" Ashley walked over to the table and sat down in the chair and put her leg over her leg. "Well, when I could, that's when I came. Better late than never. How are you doing, Daniel? Are you all right? How am I doing? You want to know how I'm doing? It would have been better if you had kept your promise. And you turned out to be nothing but a liar. You promised me everything, but you didn't keep your promise. You lived for your own pleasure. You get money just to go to resorts with your married lover. You ask me how I'm doing. Everything is great. I'm sitting in my workplace, doing my job, getting my regular paycheck. Oh, just please don't be so ironic. You know very well that if I could, I would do everything. Just lazy." Anthony turned out to be very hard-headed. I tried to talk to him, but he said he wouldn't tolerate any familiarity at the firm. If I want to help somebody, if I want to promote somebody, I'd better not ask him, because he doesn't like it, Ashley said. He doesn't like that. But then how did he get his nephew to come here? So he could have been promoted and made deputy, and I couldn't have been made head of the department. Yeah, well, that's fine. I get it. Just admit that you didn't talk to him about anything. Everybody saw how he made you his assistant and that you didn't work at all. You just came in, had fun, got money. Everybody should work like that. I don't think anybody would refuse such a job. Ashley pursed her lips and folded her arms across her chest. And anyway, what's going on here? Where is your elderly lover? And why isn't he at work yet? Why is his dear nephew, the deputy, silent? What is going on here? Why are our salaries being withheld? And you walk around happy. Spill what you know, I guess. Ashley smiled and squinted. Yes, I know. And that's why I came to you, and you jumped on me right away. I've got news. I've come to tell you everything honestly. You must be prepared. This news concerns you. That's why I came to tell you in person. It's such a little surprise. Daniel tensed slightly. The surprise she had in store for him, judging by her good mood, was not a good surprise. So it turned out to be. Unfortunately, you all witnessed the scandal associated with Anthony. I know his wife came looking for me. Anthony and his wife had a little argument. They had already worked things out, and they even made up. Well, what about you? Were you left out? Daniel grinned. No, I wasn't left out. I left that old man on my own, who I don't need anymore. He just won't be principal anymore. He's been sent away like he's been sent away. Daniel was surprised. That's how they sent him away. The head office called, and they are not happy with Anthony anymore, and they resigned. My nephew is going to follow him soon too, and a lot of heads are going to fly. And I'm here to tell you that your head will fly too. Daniel is in shock. Looking at Ashley, what does that mean? I don't understand. It means you're about to get fired too. Turns out this branch has the worst performance. When my father was running the place, it was different. Once he sold the firm, the vultures swooped in. My stepmother ruined everything. Now the firm is part of a big company that bought it, and now things are changing at a catastrophic rate. Now they're going to change directors every year, and they're going to see which manager is going to do better. That's who they're going to keep here. Anthony was not up to the task. He was probably too old. Now he's retiring from business altogether. His cheerful wife is taking him to the south to recuperate from that crazy mistress. I mean, I drained him of all his strength. Oh well, I'm not gonna kill myself over him. Wait, did you start talking about something else? You were talking about me. Daniel stopped the flow of her words. Oh yeah, how about now? What else do you have to say? You're about to find yourself overboard too. I congratulate you. You can start looking for a job already. You've got a month left, maybe a couple of weeks, or maybe you get fired in a couple of days. I don't know that either. I just know the names of those who won't be working here anytime soon, and you're one of them. Apparently, you're not that valuable an employee. If they are going to get rid of you unbelievably, it just can't be. What's going on? I've given so many years to this firm, and no one appreciates it, shouted Daniel. With all his might, he pounded his fist on the table. Ashley grinned, meaning badly. You worked, Daniel, bad you worked. Daniel breathed heavily for a while and stared at the wall. Then he turned his gaze to his former mistress. And you've been working really hard. Darling, all you did was please that old fool and live for your own pleasure. You didn't do anything. You didn't go to work. And that's not fair. Why is it that they leave you at the firm? The smile came off Ashley's face. She looked angrily at Daniel, replied, It's none of your business. If I'm left, it means I'm needed here. You, on the other hand, are about to go to all four corners of the world. Nobody needs you. You used to need me. You were even ready to tear my wife's throat out, just so you could have me, Daniel smirked. That was a long time ago. Too much time has passed since then. I don't see you as a prospect anymore. I don't need you anymore. You can roll over to your ex-wife. Maybe she'll be happy to wipe your snot out. With admiration, looking at you, but I'm not interested in that anymore. You've become so nasty and blind, like an old grandfather. I'm not interested in men like that anymore. What kind of men are you interested in? And anyway, if your beloved director won't be in charge here anymore, someone will need you. You don't even know how to work. Or did you siphon off so much money from the former director that you'll have enough for the rest of your life? Ashley. She got up from her chair and looked at Daniel with an arrogant expression. You know, I can take care of myself. I won't be lost. I've already found out everything. We have already appointed a new director. There's some posh specialist and professional. They say that he is a real shark and that he has everything on fire in his hands and that he is quite young. That's very good. That suits me. That's the kind of man I like and excite me. I'm sure I'll seduce him in no time and that everything will be fine. I'll make my life. I'll stay as an assistant to the new director. Then I'll make him do what I want. I don't know what kind of shark is coming over, but I'll make a harmless dolphin out of him in no time. Maybe if I like him enough, I'll marry him to me. That wouldn't be much trouble either, because you know about it. And I'd marry you too, if I wanted to. I just didn't want to. Daniel looked at Ashley with such hatred that it was even hard for him to keep it all inside him. He just couldn't do it anymore. For too long he'd been hiding that anger inside. Now he blamed everything on Ashley. He thought she had ruined his life. It was because of her. He divorced his wife, abandoned his children. It was because of her. He didn't have any advancement in his career. She's the reason he's all alone. It's because of her. He's now losing his job and everything he cared about. Ashley just used him, wiped her feet on him, and threw him out of her life. And yet she once thought he was the best, the most handsome, and the most successful. Daniel believed that Ashley was the only one to blame for all his failures. You filthy bitch. You'll pay for everything you've done. You'll pay for everything you've done, whispered Daniel angrily. It wasn't my fault. If you think you can blame me for anything, that's your problem. I'm not ashamed of anything. I have nothing more to say to you. Besides, the new director is coming soon, and I need to prepare carefully for his meeting. Goodbye, loser. Ashley turned and confidently walked out of Daniel's office without even saying anything back to her. Ashley was right. A week later, the new deputy director arrived. He was a savvy and serious man who clearly laid out all instructions and orders. On his first day on the job, he called Daniel and some other employees into his office, and he conveyed to them that the firm no longer needed them. They were fired. Daniel tried to prove that he had been fired by mistake and that he should stay with the firm. Before the director arrives, he will explain everything. The director would understand the mistake and keep him on the farm. The new deputy calmly listened to Daniel and then calmly told him, "You can't change anything. Orders have already been given. Documents have been signed. Our director doesn't do nonsense." The director must raise the firm from its knees, and to do this he needs the most intelligent and hardworking employees who can participate in the work from start to finish. That's who we keep at the firm. You can't do anything. The director won't talk to you. He'll be too busy doing important things. He won't have time to deal with you, and I'll almost always be the only one to talk to. Daniel had no choice but to pack his things and leave. Hard times were coming. He had to look for a new job. And Daniel couldn't even bring himself to get off the couch. He was depressed and didn't know where to put himself. He felt so bad, and he thought a lot about the past. He began to drink during the lonely evenings he spent together with a glass in his hand. He often remembered his ex-wife. That's who had always believed in him. Elizabeth supported him, helped him, tried her best for him. He just abandoned her and his children without help. How could he do that? What got into him then? And Daniel decided he had to make it right. Of course, he could still make it right. He would call Elizabeth and tell her he was ready to help her. She's probably had a hard life all these years. She's probably made herself look even worse. But that doesn't matter anymore. He's willing to put up with it. He will magnanimously tell her that he will take care of her, the children. She will, of course, start crying and telling him how bad she feels without him and his financial help. And he will pretend to feel sorry for her. And he will say that they can live together again. Yes, he would. Later, however, for about a week, he gathered the strength to call his wife. He hadn't spoken to her in years. He hadn't seen her all that time. And he was afraid that she had become quite ugly. And wouldn't it be a mistake if he asked her to move in together? If she looked too nauseating, he wouldn't be able to be around her. But he tried to reassure himself that it would still be better that way. He needs someone around him who will admire and support him. So what? That he wasn't the handsome man he used to be. Yes, he's lost his muscles. He's got a belly and a second chin. And there was a lot of gray hair. He was sure he would still look better than his ex-wife, and she would gladly welcome him into her arms. Finally, Daniel was able to pull himself together and called his wife. She didn't answer for too long, and he already thought she had changed her phone number. But then she answered the phone. "Hello, who's speaking?" Daniel was confused when he heard his ex-wife's voice, but he wasn't at all as insecure and pathetic as he had imagined. He thought he would answer his call right away. He was silent for a long time, trying to collect his thoughts. "Why aren't you talking? I can't hear you at all. There must be something wrong with the connection. Call me back," Elizabeth said. She was about to hang up, and Daniel knew it couldn't wait. "Elizabeth, hi, it's me." Daniel's voice was too quiet and unsure, and he mentally scolded himself for that. "Who is it? I can't hear very well." "Alexander, it's you. For some reason I didn't get you on my phone." "Call me back," Elizabeth said. No, it's not Alexander. Elizabeth is Daniel. Daniel who? Maybe you have the wrong number." "I'm not sure that you, Daniel," felt the desperation of his ex. Even his voice does not recognize him. "What's going on? We need to urgently take control of the situation." "Elizabeth, this is Daniel, your ex-husband and the father of our children." There was a silence. Daniel thought Elizabeth had passed out. He pulled the phone away from his face and looked at the screen. No, the call time kept going, but she hadn't disconnected. He held the cell phone to his ear again. After a few seconds, Elizabeth finally answered Daniel. What a surprise. How many years? How many winters? And what do you want? Daniel is my ex-husband. Why are you calling? Elizabeth's confident voice confused Daniel. He frantically tried to put his thoughts in order. He had forgotten everything he wanted to say to her. As he had intended, the conversation should have started completely differently. I'm just calling to see how you're doing. Elizabeth grinned. To see how I'm doing. Don't you think you're a little late with that call? Maybe a little, but that's not the main thing. Daniel hesitantly elaborated. No, not a little, but even too late. So late that I even forgot your voice. Okay, since you called, just to clarify, are you interested in the kids or in me? You don't have to answer. I'm just asking because I'm fine. And my kids are fine, too. Something else. Because I have no time, I have important things to do. Daniel bit his lips in frustration. His ex-wife had spoken to him so dismissively that he began to doubt that he had done the right thing in calling her. Aya, I'll be honest, I really miss you and the kids too. I'd like to see you. There's something I'd like to discuss with you, but only in person. What makes you think I'm going to see you? I have absolutely no time for that. Besides, we live in a different city now. I only come here for work. I don't have time to see other people, and my husband wouldn't approve. He and I haven't been spending much time together lately. We're both very busy, so I spend every minute I can with him and my family. So I'm sorry, but you and I will never see each other again. But the husband, you're married. How? Elizabeth laughed. Why are you so surprised? Yes, I have a husband, thank God. Not like you. I'm doing great. I told you. And Daniel, I've already wasted too much time on you. So goodbye. And Elizabeth passed out. Daniel pressed the phone to his cheek for a long time, and then he roared loudly in anger and frustration. And with all his might, he threw the phone against the wall. The cell phone shattered into pieces. For a very long time, Daniel stood in the middle of the room, staring at the remains of his phone. When Elizabeth turned off her phone, she sweetly stretched and nuzzled against her husband's naked chest. Tyler smiled and kissed the top of her head. What's the ex-husband showing up? What did he want? He said. Elizabeth sighed and stroked her husband's chest. Do you think he was fired? What else does he want from me? After all these years, things must be so bad for him that he decided to call. I don't know what's on his mind, but he's been in the past for a very long time. So let him stay. Well, at least I found out what he wanted. For the sake of interest, Tyler, I'm not at all interested in what's on his mind. Right now, I'm only interested in what's on my mind, and all I have on my mind is that I want to seduce you one more time before I go about my business. Share a little of your energy with me. I could use it tonight. Tyler laughed and covered them both with a blanket. Ashley arrived at the firm in a great mood. She received a call that the new director had arrived. Ashley tried to ferret out what he looked like, but no one could tell for sure. Too many people arrived at once. There were 5 of them. And which one was the principal? No one had ever figured it out. Ashley was going to find out. Today, Ashley carefully prepared for her meeting with the new director. She spent a week at the salon, getting massages, rejuvenating body treatments, and facials, and other body parts. She put on makeup, got a new haircut, changed the shape of her nails, and bought lots of new clothes. She specifically hired a stylist who picked out her new closet. She used to wear provocative clothes, bright colors, and short skirts. All of this appealed to Anthony, who had a wife her age. But Ashley was no fool. She understood that with the new director, this number won't work. If this man is a real professional, he won't like this look. That's not what he'd want. After all, Ashley was going to show him that she was not only smart, but also sexy. She was sure it would work. As Ashley, smiling confidently, made her way to the principal's office, an unfamiliar man blocked her path. "Let me through. I'm here to see the director. Do you have an appointment?" he asked. "No, I don't have an appointment. but I work here. I was a personal assistant with the former director, and I want to talk to the new director about how I should plan to continue working as a personal assistant. Okay, hold on, just a couple of minutes. I'm going to report you and ask if you can come in. What's your name? My name is Ashley. The man nodded and went into the principal's office, closing the door tightly. Ashley heard the man address the principal. I think he called him Jonathan. Great, she already knew the name. After a couple of minutes, he came out and, smiling strangely, said, Valida, you may come in. The director is very anxious to discuss your new position with you. The man apparently reported to the director that a gorgeous woman was waiting for him, who just had to be his crony. This pulled out her chin, squared her shoulders, and entered the principal's office. She closed the door and turned around. She immediately saw a man standing near the closet with his hands on his chest and staring at her. Ashley smiled and walked over to him, holding out her hand. Hello, Jonathan. It's very nice to meet you. I am happy that you are now our new director. Frankly, I've been thinking for a long time that we need to make some changes at the firm, and I'm very pleased that I'm going to be working with you. The man held out his hand to her. He continued to look at Ashley indifferently. She was slightly taken aback by this reaction, but continued to smile. She shook his hand even too assiduously with her fingers. She lightly stroked his palm, hinting that she even liked him. But the man did not respond in any way. My name is Tyler. Finally, he answered. Ashley blushed. Oh, I thought the director's name was Jonathan. I was misled. You really have been misled, because the new principal's name isn't Jonathan. And Elizabeth heard a woman's voice coming from the window. Ashley flinched and turned to the window. She hadn't noticed that there was someone else in the office when she saw a tall, slender woman in a business suit in front of her. She turned pale. Even though the woman looked very different and more handsome, Ashley recognized her immediately. It was the ex-wife of her lover, Daniel. God, this can't be Ashley. Elizabeth smiled. I see you recognize me. Well, that makes it easy for me, doesn't it? And honey, would you please let go of the hand of my husband, whom you mistook for the principal? He is a director, of course, but not of this firm. And you certainly can't seduce him. Ashley hastily removed her hand from Tyler's palm. She pressed her hand to her heart and stared at Elizabeth. How is that possible? You became the principal, and you've changed so much. Ashley looked at Daniel's ex-wife in amazement. She really had become a real beauty. There was no trace of her overweight, and she looked even younger than the last time Ashley had seen her. She looked just gorgeous. Ashley felt so insignificant next to her, even though she took great care of her appearance. My deputy reported to me why you came. Of course, I don't have time for staff meetings right now. I was planning on doing this in a few days, but that's okay. Are you ready to receive? I want to tell you that there is no longer such a position as personal assistant to the director. The last CEO apparently spent the lion's share of the firm's income on that position. Apparently, that's no longer available to you. I'm happy to offer you another position. I'm sure it would suit you very well. Which one did Ashley mutter? Elizabeth smiled and clearly said it was the position of janitor. We are in need of a cleaner. I already wanted to find someone, but now I thought I could find someone here too. I think this is the right position for you. Janitorial. Are you kidding? Ashley said in disgust. No, darling, I'm not joking. This is the position you deserve. So you agree? Ashley, shocked, looked at Elizabeth. Could she not believe that all this was happening to her? No, of course I don't agree. How can you suggest that to me? Ashley said indignantly. Elizabeth immediately became serious. She opened her bag on the table and rummaged through it. Then she pulled something out and said, Elizabeth, here you go, because I still have to pay my debt. Ashley looked with horror at the $500 that Elizabeth threw on her desk. Ashley remembered how, years ago, she too had thrown $500 on the table to her lover's ex-wife. She stared at the money, then shifted her gaze to Elizabeth. You can leave now. You and I are even, Elizabeth said. Ashley turned sharply and almost ran out of the office, slamming the door behind her. "Do you think she won't come again?" asked Tyler to his wife. "No, she won't come again. I'm sure she won't." "Well, time to get to work. Now all the unworthy people have left the firm. Now we can start rebuilding everything. I'm ready to get started." Tyler smiled and said, "You can do it." Elizabeth smiled and replied, "I have no doubt about that, my dear."